Hi, I'm Kate from InVigorate, and today we're going to be looking at the side plank. So, often thought to be more of a core exercise, good for your abs, good for your obliques, things like that, but I also really frequently give this as a shoulder exercise. So I'm going to talk you through this exercise with more of a shoulder bias. It has a variety of benefits. So A, it's just good for strength, it's good for learning to balance your strength around your shoulder, good for the more deep core stabilisation of the shoulder. Also really nice for building proprioception, so that's our awareness of where our joint is in space. Now, because our shoulder joint is a relatively unstable joint, and it also involves the articulation of the joint itself as well as the articulation between the shoulder blade and the rib cage, proprioception is so essential to getting the subtleties of muscle activation right in order that we can move as freely, as effortlessly and as pain-free as possible. Ultimately, the better our proprioception is, the better our deeper core strength is, the higher our potential strength can be. So if you're doing weight training, strength training, then this is also a lovely exercise for you. And it can be a really nice one to do pre-strength training, just to wake all those muscles up and mean that ultimately you can lift with better form, lift with better proprioception, and potentially lift heavier as well. So I'm going to talk you through the most basic iteration of this exercise first, and then we're going to progress it, and I'm going to show you how to vary it, how to adapt it, and how to make it a little bit harder as well, and how to adapt it for different situations. So, we're going to come into a side lying position. We're going to get elbow underneath shoulder, first of all. Feel free to chill there for a second whilst we get everything else set up. Palm can be flat on the ground. Try not to clench fists, that's just going to be generating unwanted tension. So just palm flat on the ground, feel the ground underneath your hand, and you can always bring your other hand down as we move up the difficulty, just to give you that little bit of extra stability. Knees are bent at the moment, and my hips are stacked one on top of each other. So first of all, we're going to have a little think about coming from this kind of collapsed position in the shoulder, and we're just going to think about pushing actively away from the ground, and just feeling like we're stacking our shoulder on top of our elbow, and our rib cage on top of our shoulder. So I'll show you what that looks like from here, and then I'll come and turn side on, and then you can see what that looks like from above as well. So we're going to start in this more collapsed position, and then we're going to think about pushing actively out and away with the shoulder. Now that will feel like we're actively pushing the front and back of shoulder, or we're balancing the push from the front and back of the shoulder. We're not overly working up high, and we're not overly clamping through the front or back walls of our armpit. So yes, our lats will be working a little bit, yes, our pecs will be working a little bit, but we're not closing down our armpit, clamping down, pressing down. We should be pressing actively up and away. And if you want to feel what that sensation feels like, reach the other fingertip up towards the ceiling. So you're basically creating the greatest distance possible between the top fingertip and the bottom elbow. So that's what it should feel. It should feel like you're making your shoulders as wide as possible and as long as possible. Okay? So what that will look like from above, that balancing front and back. Some of you may be tempted to collapse forwards or collapse back, and you can see what happens to my other shoulder as I do that. So if we do that nice active push up and away, what we want to look at is, can I balance my shoulder on top of my elbow, and then can I balance my body on top of my shoulder? Okay? So without letting it collapse forward, without letting it collapse back excessively, we just want to get ourselves actively pressing up and away in a nice balanced fashion. So, first of all, resting here, challenging yourself in itself. That may be enough to fatigue your shoulder and fatigue things, and that's where you start. Next step is to lift your hips. So simply lifting our hips and then continuing that nice active push up and away. So we can then extend legs, we can do staggered feet, always do the top foot in front of the bottom foot, just to make sure that your hips don't roll back, so we can come up into that position. Remember that you've got those fingertips if you need them. You can do stacked feet as well, and then we can come up into a long lever. So again, think about pushing up and away actively, and then up into a long lever. Now obviously that requires more strength and more proprioception in order to stabilise. So variations, what can we do to challenge things? And most of these variations can be added to any of those things I've just shown you. I'm going to swap elbows. So if we're in a nice active knee plank, foot plank, high plank, whatever you want to be. First of all, can you keep yourself stable? Could you get a light weight and just do a full range abduction with it? So we're just adding a little bit of perturbation to things, we're just challenging things a little bit. We could do, can I bring a weight forward? So just go through full range of flexion. So that could be another one. If you have access to a cable machine or you have access to a TheraBand, like an elastic band, you can do, can I keep myself stable? Can I keep myself balanced? And then can I just do a row in this position? We can do thread the needle. So this makes it a little bit more dynamic. We're looking, can we thread top arm in between bottom, elbow and knee or foot. So all of those will add an extra dynamic challenge. You can add whatever variety you like. You could be rolling a ball around in front of you, you could be dribbling a ball with your hand. I don't mind, as long as you're adding an extra dynamic challenge, as long as you're keeping yourself stable. You could pop your elbow onto a Bosu, onto a wobble cushion, anything like that. So have a play around with things, but the basic concept remains the same. We want to feel like we're balancing the top and bottom of our shoulder and the front and back of our shoulder, and we want to feel like we're working within our capacity in terms of strength, in terms of stamina and things. As soon as you start to fatigue and fall back into old habits, we're then reinforcing movement patterns that we don't want to reinforce. So just come away from it, take a rest, come back to it when you feel like you've got more energy again. But as I said, this is a lovely one for activating things, a lovely one for waking things up, and a great one for proprioception as well. As always, do give me a shout via email if you've got any questions, any problems with this exercise, and have fun with it. Take care.